You know, for all the things that I like to do with these reviews, tell you guys what the best indie games are coming out, and in particular give feedback to developers so that they can learn from their mistakes, it's surprising I don't do more early access titles, because that seems like the best, combination. I give you guys information about if this game is worth playing or, you want to look at it, and give that feedback so it can improve. And today's game was one that I looked at and was like, okay, this has potential. And boy, does it have potential. In fact, it may be hitting that potential a good amount right now. Cinderia is an action roguelite that releases on the PC, specifically Steam, today, March 30th, 2026. The price of the game will be posted on the screen here. I don't know what it is right now. And unlike my other sort of first impressions and reviews, this will not have a score. It's an early access title. But whether or not you should buy it, you'll get that information. But before I do the impressions of this game, you should know that this key was obtained from the developer for review purposes. That won't change my opinion of the game in the end, but you should know that because of FTC guidelines, as well as the whole morals thing, So let's just get down to it. Is the game fun? Absolutely. And quite frankly, it's in the top half, if not the top third, of action roguelikes that I've played in the last few years, and that's in its current state. Now, don't get me wrong, there is things to improve here, and it's nowhere near the top of the genre. Then again, Hades and Hades 2 sort of sits alone in terms of that. Sure, others come close, but that's sort of my, top of the top. Now, the question is why? And the fact is that the gameplay loop here is not only fulfilling and rewarding, the game has those little details that you would want in roguelikes that really push the game to the next level in terms of not only replayability, but strategy. At the time of this recording, I have about 10 to 12 hours in the game with 4 characters unlocked. All the characters that I've unlocked at this point do have small niches that they fill, but for the most part, you have a melee attack, you have a ranged attack with the exception of the Last Dragon Guardian, 3 skill slots that you will pick up over time, and some sort of dodge ability. Again, I'll get to the Last Dragon Guardian. She's a little bit special in her mechanic. So you start the game with only Rue unlocked, the Red Riding Hood character. She's a jack-of-all-trades character. She's able to throw knives and use abilities that are able to poison or bleed enemies over time. And I would say that she's the sort of okay, get you introduced into the game. She can do a little bit of everything, but not necessarily something entirely at an A+ level, with the exception of poison. Poison is very powerful in this game. I'll get to that in the sort of nitpick section. Then you got Ribbit. She's the blacksmith girl here. She is a ranged character. She can do melee, but you're going to want to focus on shooting. The element here is that you have to reload shots. Sometimes your reloads are able to make explosives or, a little bit of a different shot depending on what kind of skills or abilities you take. And she doesn't want to get directly into the fight in most cases, but she's able to do a lot of damage from afar. Third character I unlocked was Uma. She is the forest druid princess. She's able to summon creatures after melee attacking over time. It's sort of a resource where she can use it to do bigger spells as well. But really, when you hit 100 on this gauge down here, it will summon 2 hedgehogs, for example, and they will do damage over time. They'll go away after a certain amount of time, but sometimes you can also, get a big bear who can be a tank for you, depending on what abilities you take. She is going to take a little bit more damage if you're not paying attention, at least in my experience, and her ranged attack, while useful, it's very easy to mess with, especially if you're not paying attention to exactly where you're hitting on screen, which may sound weird, but it is the difference between playing with keyboard and mouse and playing with a controller. That preciseness, especially with the keyboard and mouse, does play a factor here. Then there's Isdra, who is probably my favorite character, even though if you had told me she was going to be my favorite character, I would have said you were nuts. She focuses on parrying. If you block at the right time, she doesn't have necessarily a dodge per se, but if you block at the right time, you can do immense amount of damage. But on top of that, she also has a frost mechanic that's able to freeze enemies, deal damage over time, and it just sort of worked for me. It clicked here. Part of it is the fact that some of these attacks have reasonable wind-ups to them, and while you may have multiple enemies, coming at you, I always felt like the blocks made sense in terms of setting myself up for it, moving into place, putting the block down, and sort of focusing down an enemy. It felt right. And the synergy with some of her abilities, and in particular, these sort of add-ons you can get, really made me want to explore the character more, even though I've played probably 1 or 2 less runs than everybody else here. I'll probably focus on her when streaming this tonight over on Twitch. Yes, I'm going to stream it. But she was a fun character. She was something that was cool and yet pushed me in a way that I didn't expect. The formula for the game is simple. You start the game, you kill a bunch of enemies in a room, it gives you a reward. You choose your next room based on what reward you want, whether it be a new skill card, you can get up to 3 skill cards, and then if you choose the skill card again, it will upgrade a skill of your choice. It is a passive buff, it is gold, maximum health, stuff like that. You can also get random events or scripted events if you need to, unlock a character and you have to save them. There's a good variety of those events, especially as you continue on and unlock more elements of the game. You reach certain milestones, you block 100 damage or dodge 100 damage. A new item may be unlocked, or, a new character. And it's a good drip feed of the content in the first 10 hours. Is just as you're like, okay, this is starting to get a little bit, not boring, but like a little bit repetitive, then you find something new. Some of the things that you would expect are here. You get your skill tree with an unlockable resource that you get things like a revive or more health or the ability to get more gold based off of, killing enemies. But then you start unlocking things like the ability to unlock potions in a merchant while you're in the actual field, or the ability to see certain elements that will help you make easier choices. And there's a lot to unlock, and while I still haven't unlocked a good chunk of it, it does give me reasons to come back and go, okay, I'm going to play this again, And part of that is also the variety of the different characters and their skills. Now, you have seen abilities that this game is using before. Putting poison on your daggers so you can do poison damage. Okay, yeah, seen it before. A dragon coming out of the sky and putting ice on the field in a horizontal element. Maybe not specifically that, but yeah, you've seen abilities like that. But what makes this game fun, at least in my opinion, is when those abilities start to synergize with the passive abilities that you can get, where they combine in such a way where you're getting whole new combinations that are just entertaining. This Blood Wave ability, it is the bread and butter for the build that ended up winning me the first time around of a full run. And there's an ability that you're able to get, a passive ability that increases the duration if it bounces off a wall. The thing is, if you throw it in the right direction and throw it in a way where it's bouncing off of walls repeatedly, you could get 2, 3, 4 of them going, and they could really do some damage in boss fights, especially if you angle it right. And it's those moments where you're like, oh god, this is all working, and you're just so locked into what you're doing, where maybe you forgot about something and all of a sudden you're in danger because you're so focused on this cool combination that really makes me appreciate the design of this game. It felt like it had gone through iteration after iteration where they adjusted things here, adjusted things there. Hell, I played the game a week before release here, and I played like maybe 2 or 3 matches, and then all of a sudden an update came and things reasonably changed, mostly for the better. It seems like there's an idea of balance here that may not necessarily be 100% there, but it puts fun present in the actual action, and I think that is something that's very important, especially for an early access game. I also like the fact that the presentation is reasonable in terms of being able to show you a good amount of the action. Granted, it does get cluttered at times, but it is easy to see an enemy and their little sort of highlight when they're about to attack, and I could see that in a lot of cases. Some cases I couldn't, more on that later, but I also will say that the presentation isn't necessarily pushing the limits of creativity at times. I do like these designs. These are well-tested designs, don't get me wrong, to the point where I do wonder if they were influenced by certain media. I mean, the Dragon Knight, let me just be honest with you, it's Albedo from Overlord with a blonde hair. I mean, don't tell me it's not. Granted, the first time I thought was the Blue Eyes White Dragon personified, but regardless. Then there's Rivet, the blacksmith girl. I thought Handler from Monster Hunter World, or maybe it's Monster Hunter Rise, one of the handlers. A lot of these designs are familiar. Hell, the first character is literally called Red Riding Hood. I thought there was going to be a theme there. There wasn't. Regardless, these designs still work. I do like the characters, and I actually do really like this art style in terms of the face design. It may not necessarily be the most visually impressive, but it does give a sense of like grittiness to the world in terms of the way that they've designed it. Sort of like everything's dark, everything is going to go wrong. I actually did like the boss designs though a lot. In particular, the dancers and the overall big bad of the entire game. Now, in early access videos, I do want to also address the developer directly in terms of things that I think they could improve. Because while this is a game that I definitely think is worth playing right now, I do think there are little things and very tiny things in certain cases that would push the game to another level for me, and I do sort of want to address them here. The first being this element right here, these falling rocks. Now, visually, the game is reasonably good when it comes to seeing the action, but when it comes to some of the environmental effects, in particular, these rocks that drop from the ceiling, with the chaos that can happen on screen, aka all the enemies, the effects, the thrown knives, everything like that, it is hard to see them at times. You really have to be paying close attention to be able to see the outline, especially, I guess I can't say this for sure, but I feel like certain types of colorblind people would have trouble with this. This should be a little bit more defined and easier to see because you obviously want the player to react to them and thus, make it a little bit more visible. Now, you don't have to make it, neon light visible. You do want to sort of tell the player, hey, maybe you shouldn't be, throwing everything willy-nilly out there. But sometimes enemies just group up and you just can't see it just because of, well, fate. And that does feel a little bit bad. Now, I also think that one of the best things you could do is add another boss or two in the first area and the second area. Granted, I know that this has got a timeline and everything like that. And it is a good boss fight in terms of that first boss fight and the second boss fight, but just having a little variation there would go a long way. It may be planned, it may not be planned, but I think that would help. I think the biggest thing that you could work on in the, now to help your players is the information element. And I'm not even talking about the fact that the game's not fully localized, per se. There was enough information in terms of being able to make choices in order for me to play through the game, even though there were some elements that were not translated at that point. But I'm talking more about some of the systems and explaining things a little bit better in terms of not necessarily a tutorial, but just having the information on hand. For example, Isdra the Last Dragon Guardian has a frost mechanic, and it seems to deal with parrying at the right time, as I mentioned before. But here's the thing. That frost mechanic, when you see the word frost, you don't necessarily associate it with that blocking mechanic. You just see that there's frost, but you're not exactly sure what's going on and how that happens. And yes, there are some tool tips with skills and things like that, but being able to, like, you know, put my mouse over this shield and it maybe saying frost would have gone a long way. And it's little things like that that would help the player in most cases here. Hell, it's entirely possible that I may be wrong about that frost and that shield connection. I thought it was because when I got like plus 20 frost, I noticed that going up. But that's the thing. It should be a little bit more clear what is going on there. Maybe even have a menu explaining everything, and if you can't put it into tooltips, would help a lot here. Now, in terms of the balance, I actually think it's in an okay state. Granted, there are builds that seemingly are a little bit more powerful than others in terms of combinations. I noticed that the poison element, especially for the Red Riding Hood, seemed to be really, really powerful. That may need to be taken a look at. The fact is, that's how I beat it for the first time. It was the combination of the poison and the sort of like ability to sort of make the poison all go at once. It just literally deleted characters and deleted enemies. But in terms of playstyle and gameplay, like, I think it was on par in terms of what I would expect balance to be for a game coming into early access. There's things to fix, but hey, you're sort of expecting that. Now, I will say that I did find some bugs in my playthrough, and part of it seemed to have to do with the builds in question. At one point, a new build was pushed, and for some reason, my character restarted at the start of a run with everything they had had up to that point in the run. So, like, they got to, like, the third level, and then I quit the game, came back, there was a download and an update, and I had start the first level with what I had gotten in the third. And that run, despite it not working, let's just say I blew through the first, 2 levels. So be careful of bugs like that. There's this bug right here where you don't actually see the name of the actual enemy because of the placement of the black bars there. It's little things like that. It's also this little attack right here that sort of just stops. Just stops. It should be moving, but it just stops. Just watch those little things. And obviously, bug fixes are going to be necessary, but I wanted to provide that. So, based on what I've said so far, it should be clear that I am recommending Cinderia, especially if you're looking for an action roguelike to bite your teeth into. Granted, story-wise, I don't think it's there yet. I do think there are elements that they've set up that could be interesting, but it's obvious that the gameplay is the focus, especially in this early going, and I think, well, it's done that well. Mechanically, it works. Controls-wise, it works. And I do love the skill sets here. And I do wonder what they will add in addition to things. Because while things are familiar, they have twisted them just enough at times to really make me want to see what they have around the next corner. Granted, I do think there are little things that need to be cleaned up here, especially from a presentation and sound standpoint. Sometimes sound doesn't play when I would expect it to in terms of enemies, and there's little hiccups and bugs here and there, but again, I would expect that for an early access title. If you want to see more of a full run, I will be doing a full run of a couple of them over on Twitch at 7:30 p.m. tonight of the release of this video. So if you want to catch it, go over to my Twitch. It's in the description below. If you want to see more content like this, hit the subscribe button, like this video, comment if you want to see more content like this. I apologize that this one took a little bit more time. There wasn't a game that I was like ready to review up until I got this one, and then it was coming out at the end of the month. So I'm like, you know what? There's a lot of shit going on at work. I'll focus on that at the moment. It's been tiring. The whole AI thing, especially with software, has fucked a lot of things up. It's not a revolution. It's an improvement in certain ways, God help us. God help us all. My plan for this week is to try to get an understanding of what I want to review next and what is upcoming. And until then, I'll see you all later. And keep on gaming.